Milwaukee's a pretty trusted brand. But is their leaf blower worth the high price tag? Today, I'm gonna be unboxing, demoing, going over the specs, just completely reviewing this leaf blower to see if it's really worth the hype. But if you wanna see a really scientific comparison of this leaf blower to another, you're gonna wanna check out this video when we're done here. But the one we're watching right now, that one's gonna give you an overview of this leaf blower, what it can do, what people say about it, and what I think about it first time using. Before I open it up, let's talk price. This leaf blower it comes in the pack, right? With one battery and one charger, okay? For that, it costs $399. I can get just the blower with no battery for right now, only about $150. But if you need an extra battery for this thing, it's $279 for another battery. Now, part of that is, this is an 18 volt system, which is cool, right? Not just that it's 18 volts specifically, but rather that it uses the same batteries as the other Milwaukee 18 volts stuff. So if you already have like the Milwaukee stuff, then getting the $150 version is not a bad gig, because you probably already have batteries and a charger. But the downside comes if you need to buy more batteries. The other cool thing about this 18 volt system is that this one comes with a battery that, if I remember right, holds 12 amp hours of power. That's 3 times as much as a lot of others. In fact, 6 times as much as the ones from like the handheld tools setup that I've been using for years, which just goes to show just how much capacity and how capable batteries have come a long way. So I understand why it's such an expensive battery if it really does hold 12 amp hours. But still, that's kind of a costly way to get in. I think part of the reason they need such a big battery is because they're powering this yard equipment with an 18 volt battery. I'm gonna go ahead and pull it out, but while I'm pulling it out, let me share with you some of the specs for this thing. This says it's capable of 500 cubic feet per minute of airflow. And so at the size of the nozzle, that means that it will blow air at 120 miles an hour. I'm curious to see how well it actually does, but I can't quite measure up to 120 miles an hour. I have an anemometer that can measure some of that. And so we're gonna see if on its lowest speed, if it maxes out my anemometer, then I at least know that we're in the right ballpark. All right, let's open up this box. I believe this is probably the battery. There you go. There's your 12.0, your 12 amp hour, 18 volt battery right there. We're gonna wanna charge that up here in just a few minutes before we can do some real thorough testing. But let's go ahead and keep unpacking. I do have an instruction manual, and I have 300 plus solutions inside. All right, next we have the actual main blower mechanism here. Air goes in the back, blows through here, goes out the front. Okay, we got a charger here, and the style of charger here does matter. It's this kind where you actually slide the battery in. Those tend to be able to charge faster, so we'll get that set up here in just a minute. And then we just have this hose, or the tube rather. So we've got the tube here. There's only one size. There's not like an end. Sometimes they'll come with like another end that you can stick on there that makes it smaller, which allows it to blow faster. So the same volume of airflow blows a little faster right there at the end. This doesn't have that, which is not that big of a deal, but it is something that some others come with. Okay, so that's everything in the box. And that means that the setup is super easy. This is just gonna slide onto the end, I believe. Yep, and it's got a little clip there. So to take it off, it's as easy as just pressing down on that clip and pulling it off. Easy peasy. And then the battery is just gonna slide in. And then to get it off, I press the 2 button. I'm gonna wanna get this charging so that we can do some thorough testing, but just taking a quick look at it, I'm curious what all it can do. Okay, so it is variable speed. I press that down and I slide this forward, and it's got like 5 little bars on it. So you'll be able to see that here. Let me take the battery out so you can see it's got like 5 little bars there, so you can just kind of get a feel for slower, faster. So we'll see on the slowest speed how much air it's pushing. So I was curious to see if there's any sort of battery indicator. There is, it's on the battery itself. If I press down on this little button, it lights up telling me how many bars it has. So there's 4 little lights. It's only showing 1 of them right now. And so that means the battery's pretty low. So in order to be able to do our thorough testing, we're gonna need to charge it. Let's go ahead and talk about though, what people say in the reviews so that we can get a little biased before we actually start testing. just kidding. All right, so these are reviews from the Home Depot website. So there's some 1-star reviews. And I like to look at the 1-star reviews to try to look for patterns. Because if there are some 1-star reviews, but they're just like people whining and complaining, or if it just looks like it's sort of a one-off, somebody got a fluke, like there's the battery that they got with it was just a dud, something like that. That to me is less of a worry than if there's a consistent issue. And so here's what we see. Reviews that say that the battery life doesn't last 10 minutes. That might be kind of a fluke. Another person says it's the first Milwaukee tool they've ever been disappointed with. There are a lot of people that were mad that the $150 version doesn't come with a battery. I get that. One person says theirs stopped working after 3 months. Another person says theirs stopped working after 2 days. Other people say the battery overheats with basic use. About like 90% of the reviews, there's almost 1,500 reviews on this just on the website, on the Home Depot website, and it's 4.5 stars. But about 90% of the negative reviews are related to the battery, which is a little bit unsurprising given that it's only an 18-volt system powering a high-powered leaf blower. I'm gonna go ahead and charge the battery and then we'll actually test this thing out. The more scientific testing is coming again in that other video, but we're just gonna see how it works. One more thing is I wanna talk a little bit about the build quality. The plastic and stuff that it's made out of, I've held some pretty cheap ones before. In fact, if you watch that other scientific video, I'm comparing this to a very inexpensive blower. The plastic in it is a little more flexible, a little bit less stiff, which means that it's gonna be more durable. It's gonna handle getting accidentally dropped better without cracking. I still would probably keep it out of sunlight, like don't store it where sunlight's coming in through a window because this plastic is probably over time going to degrade and crack if it's in the sunlight. It does look like there's little like clip holder things here on the end. Like there might be a little nozzle attachment that you can get or some kind of attachment that would come and then clip on. It didn't come with that. So I don't know what that's for, but probably some sort of attachment on the end. All right, so there you have it. That's kind of your, without running it, my impression of it. It seems like a good blower. It seems like it'll hold up, but I don't know. It doesn't seem that special even compared to the really cheap one. So we'll see how it handles. All right, now that I've had the chance to use this afternoon, I have a little bit more to say about it. As we know, this is a pretty expensive unit, especially when you compare it to some of the things you could get on Amazon. So I was curious to see if it really lives up to the cost. I would say the hype, but there's not like a ton of hype. It's just more expensive. And then Milwaukee's a good brand. Couple things I noticed. One, the different speeds, that's not really like different speeds. It sort of is. Really what it is, it holds down the trigger. So like if I pull the trigger just a little bit, it blows less, right? And I get more the more I depress the trigger. Well, all this does is the further I slide it over, the more it holds the trigger depressed. So really, it's just kind of a convenient way of keeping the trigger at a certain level of depression to have a certain amount of speed. So if I kind of wanted it about half speed, I can sort of set the trigger there, and then I can walk around without having to kind of hold my finger at just the right spot. So it's a really convenient feature, but it's not like a separate speed thing where it's like, I set it to a certain speed and hold the trigger all the way, if that makes sense. It's kind of how I assumed it would work. That's not how it worked. Overall, the build and everything, as I used it, it's solid. No wobbling or wiggling of any parts. Everything holds together really, really well. The battery is heavier than on some units. It's definitely bigger and heavier. Anyway, as I used it, it felt fine. Holding it up like this, it feels a little off balance, but holding it the way that I normally would to actually use it is totally fine. Now let's talk briefly about the battery. I was impressed. This battery that holds 12 amp hours, I charged it up from, I guess, 1 bar, 1 light out of 4 to full in about an hour. It charged pretty dang fast. So the fast charger did a job of charging it fast. It was pretty warm when I pulled it off the charger though. So something about, the quick charging, it heated it up. So if I'd taken it and immediately thrown it on here and then used the blower until the battery was dead again, it might have overheated the battery, which I did hear some reviews that talked about the battery overheating. I used it for a little while. It wasn't gonna overheat anytime fast, but I did allow the battery to cool after it charged. So it charged and then I left it for a little while and then I came back and used it. If I was pulling it right off the charger, I think that that's a possibility. So something to keep in mind. Now let's talk about performance. This thing advertises pretty solid speeds, right? I think we said 120 miles an hour. I believe it. Okay, I set the speed, I wasn't even halfway pressing the trigger on my anemometer before it overtook what it could handle. And then when I turned it all the way up, it was just blowing like crazy. If anything, I think that it's maybe understated how much it can blow. It's pretty dang powerful. Just using it in my yard and stuff, I think this would be able to be capable of doing pretty much anything I need a blower to do. The only question is just gonna be the battery life. So if I've got 2 hours worth of blowing to do because I got a big property, I might want another battery or 2. If you're just using it on a semi-regular basis to blow off the, stuff off the sidewalk, or you need to blow leaves into a pile. I think even like damp leaves that are kind of stick to the ground, this is gonna have no trouble blowing them right off. I was very impressed. So all in all, here are my thoughts. I think it's an excellent blower. I do think that it's a lot to spend on a blower. I get that the battery is the same form factor as other Milwaukee tools, but here's the way I think about it. If I am gonna have battery powered tools, I'm perfectly happy having one form factor that I use for kind of all my hand power tools in like the garage, and a separate form factor for my yard tools. Because those yard tools are oftentimes just gonna need more juice, and in order for them to last long enough to do the jobs I need them to do, they're gonna need to be bigger. That's why I've been happy with the Greenworks products I've had for several years. Not to say that they're necessarily any better than this, but just the size of the batteries. I could use that blower for probably 2 hours straight before I would drain a standard size battery that costs a heck of a lot less than this one. So that's my thought. I think that it's a very, very good blower, but I think it's overpriced. But now I'm excited to see how it compares to the cheap Amazon special that costs a fraction of what this one does. If you wanna see how that comparison went, you might wanna go check out this video right now, because that's gonna help you decide just how much more maybe this is worth versus something substantially less expensive. Maybe it's not worth any more. I guess I just have to go watch the video. Thanks for joining me today. We'll see you in that video, probably. If not, we'll see you in our next video here on Fixter.